It is a great pleasure to participate once again in an event in defense of Ashraf. My warmest welcome to our American friends and guests. Their presence and their support is of extreme value for us. Last week, following the disclosure of the assassination plot of the Saudi ambassador in the US and the planned explosions in Saudi and Israeli embassies in Washington, the world was again caught by surprise and horror. During the years, we are being continuously shocked by the regime in Iran. However, all these events are nothing but what the Iranian resistance has been telling us along. The insensitivity of Western countries to these warnings has in fact significantly damaged peace and security in the Middle East and in the entire world. The Iranian regime back in 1979 was the founder of terrorism, hostage-taking, and Islamic fundamentalism. Similarly, from those very days, the Iranian resistance has been disclosing this phenomenon. From the outset, the PMOI has been describing this regime by three characteristics: terrorist, fundamentalist, and tyrannical. Services of the PMOI to the international community for disclosing Iranian regime's terrorism is certainly as important as its warnings about regime's nuclear proliferation. These include a wide range of issues, from the hostage-taking of the US Embassy personnel in Tehran in 1979, to details of hostage-takings in Lebanon, terrorist interference in Iraq, both before and after 2003, and regime's terrorist plots in Saudi Arabia in 86, 87, the terrorist explosion in Argentina, and we could go on with the list for the rest of the morning. In 2005, the Iranian resistance disclosed in detail a list, a very precise list, of thousands of elements of the Iranian regime in Iraq whose job is to promote terrorism. There is an album of this list at your disposal if you want to see it and to check it. Only hours after the 1996 explosion in Saudi Arabia, Mrs. Rajabi declared that the Iranian regime is responsible party, and then later on the Iranian resistance disclosed further details. The US government, with the goal to appease the mullahs, attempted to cover up the role of the Iranian regime. Treatment of the PMOI by Europe and United States is the greatest deviation from combating fundamentalism and terrorism. By believing in and advocating a modern, democratic, and peaceful Islam, the Iranian resistance is indeed the antithesis of fundamentalism and terrorism. By labeling the PMOI as terrorist, we have opened the way for fundamentalism and terrorism in the best way possible. I do hope that this time the US government, and in particular Secretary Clinton, have learned their lessons from the experience of the past, and indeed from this last terrorist assault of the Iranian regime, and by delisting the PMOI and removing all obstacles from its way, cease to fuel Iranian regime's fundamentalism and terrorism, a matter clearly against the essential interests of the US and of Europe. Protection of Ashraf, which is our subject of discussion today, is indeed our first priority in this moment. Ashraf residents, whom many of us know personally. Tune, you remember our visit. So there are people that are not just, you know, someone far away. People with faces and personalities we know directly. Ashraf residents are the largest, the most genuine and the most organized democratic and anti-fundamentalist force against the regime. Thus, our support for Ashraf isn't just a humanitarian issue, which of course is a very burning humanitarian issue, but it is also a necessity for peace and stability in the region and in the world. The United States and the European Union have clearly neglected their responsibilities in regards to Ashraf. The brave and praiseworthy fight of Mrs. Rajabi has had very significant achievements for protection of Ashraf residents. The engagement of United Nations, both Commissioner for Human Rights and Commissioner for Refugees, is very important. The appointment of a special advisor, envoy for Ashraf by Lady Ashton, has also been a significant step that we acknowledge very sincerely. But both the Iranian regime and the fraction of the Iraqi government that works under their influence try vigorously to create obstacles against the United Nations plans and actions and against the good work of Mrs. Ashton's special advisor. As Mrs. Rajabi pointed out, I reiterate that now is the turn for European member states to strongly support the European Union Special Advisor and Envoy and the plans of United Nations. For fulfillment of these plans, political and material support is needed. Member states must force Iraq to annul its deadline. This is absolutely crucial. So, the United Nations High Commissioners, both for human rights and refugees, must finish its mission in Ashraf for reaffirmation of Ashraf residents' asylum status and provide arrangements for the special advisor of Mrs. Ashton to visit Ashraf. Member states must also support the United Nations for stationing permanent observers in Ashraf to provide urgent help for sick people and wounded people in the camp. We in Europe have enough leverage to accomplish these actions. So we once again call on the European Union, on the European Council, on member states to publicly condemn the deadline by Iraqi government to close down and attack Ashraf before the end of this year. Dear friends, dear colleagues, dear Mrs. President, time is shortening. We cannot fail. Thank you very much.
And thank you for hosting this very important event. You can say, despite of the terrible pictures we saw in the start of this meeting, there is some positive developments. It is a positive development that UNHCR has been more involved in the case. It is a positive involvement that European Union has appointed a special envoy for this question. It is possible, positive developments. But as it has been stressed already, we are in a terrible hurry. Is to try to prolong the deadline, to make the deadline later by all the possibilities we have through national parliaments, European parliaments, international organizations, and so on. But we are in a hurry. And therefore, the task we have from here is very obvious. We know what we have to do tomorrow, not the day after tomorrow, perhaps not even tomorrow, but today, in order to solve this problem. I want to mention another thing which perhaps is not directly linked with this question, but anyway it is. And that's the question of the PMOI being put on the terrorist list still in the United States. We know that the PMOI has been on the terrorist list in the European Union. We know it was very difficult to get the PMOI off the terrorist list. We fought that battle and we won that battle because in the end some very good judges in Britain had the opportunity to see all the documents in the case. And as one of them concluded in public, it was a perverse decision to put the PMOI on the terrorist list. The judge was asked, isn't it quite strange that a judge call a decision by the government for perverse? And the judge answered, yes, it is very seldom. But I have had the possibility to see all the documents, and therefore I think that this characterization is correct. But it was a hard battle, because, as we have heard, a lot of countries wanted to appease the Iranian regime. But it succeeded. And it was important that it succeeded. And I think that I speak for all the members of the European Parliament who have been involved in this when I say to our American friends that you have our full support in this struggle, the full support in order to win a victory here. In the end, I just want to say that we always have to remember what this is about. It can sound a little bit cynical, but what we are doing here is not about the people in Camp Ashraf. It's not about PMOI even. Certainly not about us. It's about the Iranian people. Because the big tragedy is that the organization PMOI called a terrorist are called terrorists by a regime which is indeed a terroristic regime. A regime suppressing its own population, suppressing women's rights, suppressing trade union rights, suppressing religious minorities, suppressing free speech, even killing its own people. All this is not about Camp Ashraf. All this is about to help to come to a situation where we have a free Iran, and where the people in Iran is free and can make their own choice for the future. I'm very proud to be a part of that struggle.